Hello everyone, welcome to MVTales and welcome to another interesting vlog. As I said in my previous vlog, this vlog is all about a tour to the London Museum, the Docklands Museum that we have visited recently. And if you are someone who is not that interested into the history, then you can straight away skip this video. But if you are someone who loves to learn and know about the history, then yeah, this video is for you. And before I begin with, this is a disclaimer that all you hear in this video is about the things that I have understood visiting this museum and the things I have learned. This may not be completely true, or there may be the things that I haven't spoke about. I'm going to give you a glimpse of my complete 2.5 hours of time that I have spent there learning the things which I may not have understood completely, but only the things which I have understood properly. So, to start with, this museum building is a 200-year-old number 1 warehouse at West India Quay. That was a remnant of the vast docks that was closed in 1980s, and as of my knowledge, the docks now are handled or taken care through the Canary Wharf. So, if you see this museum, it covers completely like the Roman origins, the growth of the Port of London, the warehouse of the world era in the 19th and or we can say early 20th century, and also how the modern docklands are redeveloped and have been being used. And you can also see the different sections here which talks about how the trading was, the migration. It also talks about the commerce, it also talks about the industry, war, and the complex history of the slavery that has happened during those times in the century. And it also gives the access to the galleries that has the exhibits like the number 1 warehouse, the sailor town, the wartime, how the wartime was in London, and also it talks about a very important section, that's the sugar and slavery. So when we talk about these docks are divided into two sections, that is the West India docks and the East India docks. Specifically the West India docks or the West India Quay, that was opened in 1802, which is the current building, and that is used exclusively by ships for bringing goods like sugar, rum, and molasses from the West Indies, which will be serving the British Caribbean colonies. So that's the reason it's called as a West India Docks or a West India Quay. Whereas East India Docks, that was built later, which is opened in 1806, and that is specifically built for an East India Company to handle high value and lower bulk goods from Asia. So the history this museum is holding basically traces back to the time when London was trading with the world. That was in the years between 1600 to 1798, and the number of boats the London was using from the London's port was from 3,000 to 14,600. And this tells a story of how London's trade business grew with ships from all over the world bringing back like spices, tea, silk. And as we keep moving forward in this museum, we also come to know about how the London's overlooked role was in the slavery. And here you can see the glimpse of cutaway model of a West India dock warehouse that was there in the earlier times. So, coming back to slavery, only ships registered in Liverpool, Bahia, and Rio de Janeiro trafficked more African men and women and children into slavery. But it was London that benefited more from these slavery profits. So, the London had profits flooded into banks, insurance, and the government, and it funded shipbuilding, contracting, dock building, and business. So, in short, slavery became a part of London's fabric, and that gave them like the huge benefits. So the campaign to end slavery gained momentum later on, and enslaved people in Caribbean rebelled, helping to undermine profits. And in London, people shared anti-slavery literature, and literally they stopped buying sugar. Yes, so that was something new to me when I visited this museum and learnt about. Later, as we all know, slavery in the British Empire eventually became illegal in 1833, and they replaced that slavery with a new word that's called as an apprenticeships. But the apprenticeship system didn't work, and people were still treated like slaves because that was just a replacement for the word slave. So this museum holds a really good history about how the things were then and how this slavery has been eradicated and the issues they had. And also they keep on playing these videos to show us how exactly the docklands was working then, and how the goods have been transmitted from the docks into the ships or into the from the ships to the docks. So these are like a really good enlightening videos that we have in the museum that we come across while we move from one gallery to the other gallery. So, as these docks were being operated after 1806, a few years later, the London Bridge was demolished and a new one was built, making a distinct transition from past to present as London came into the modern age. Whereas, meanwhile, there was a Thames tunnel that was being constructed beneath the river, which was the world's first tunnel under a navigable waterway. So, London overground trains still use this tunnel today. Yes, even till date, these are still used. Most of the displays that you see here are the things or the machinery or the tools that have been used in building the ships or building the docks or handling the ships and the goods and everything. All the goods, materials and the tools that we see in this museum, they trace back to some hundreds of years ago. They are not just some few years ago, but they are hundreds of years ago. And I said earlier, this museum holds a history of approximately 400 years till date. And as we all know that London was the financial heart of the British Empire, so the London's docks had the money to expand and bring even more trade into the city, that too very quickly. So wooden ships became very less common while iron shipbuilding and engine making expanded rapidly, and new docks were opened so bigger ships with bigger cargoes could come into the London, and London has become one of the biggest ports for the ships. And big industry also started appearing on the riverside, which brought more jobs and money into the area: shipyards, engineering works, pottery, gas work, and so many. So we see here some of the original features from when the building was busy working warehouse, like winches that were used to hoist heavy cargo, and I said earlier the tools that they have used in handling so many of these dock operations or the ship operations. The model you see here is a Princess Alice. She was a paddle steamer boat that was tragically sank in the River Thames on September 1878. This museum also displays the luxury goods that have been bought from India in the 17th and 18th century by the East India Company. So this section displays the goods that have been bought from India, and these include the gold and silver pepper pots and also the muslin cloth, and the most precious thing that I saw there was this diamond and ruby studded locket that has been mined from Golconda, and the other things you see here are imported or bought from China, the porcelain things that you see here. And the very important one more history about these docklands is on 7 September 1940, Germany bombed riverside works and docks in London. Buildings were destroyed and fire and smoke covered the Thames. Docks were bombed for 13 weeks in a row and destroying most of the area. Cable works produced the pipeline under the ocean, which supplied fuel for advance cross across France. Over 23,000 vessels in total were converted, maintained and repaired in and around the docks. So even with victory in sight, rocket attacks in 1944 and 1945 brought more destruction to this area again. This wall in the gallery exhibits the historical roster of the ship names, captains, and the year in which the movement of the ships has been done, with an information on the slave trade and also the ship movement. So this also gives the count of the slaves that has been traded as a part of these trade and ship movements. Along with the historical artifacts, this museum also displays the movements and the fight that has begun during those times, and also the voices that has been raised to end the slavery and the fight that has been fought against the illegal trading that was happening during those centuries.
that we learned from this museum is about the sea whaling. London Docklands was a major global whaling hub from 17th to 19th century, driven by demand for whale oil and baleen. Early ventures by the Muscovy Company led to flourishing Arctic and South Sea whaling, with ships departing for rich whaling grounds, offloading oil and bone in the busy docks, and employing thousands until the trade declined by mid-1800s, with the last ship sailing in 1859. So even that, all the history we can learn, and we can see the references or the history of the things that have been used during those times when the sea whaling was done. And the information or the history that I understood regarding the sea whaling was, after being harpooned at sea, whales were hauled to the ship and killed. They were then taken apart to extract only the most valuable parts of the animal. So the main target for them was whale fat, which was called blubber. When boiled, blubber produced oil which could be used in soap or paint, applied as a lubricant, or burned to light homes. Whalers also removed the animal's jaw bones and drained the oil inside. The bones were sometimes used in the framework of garden sheds or as ornamental gate posts. Oil from sperm whales was especially valuable because it burned without color or smell. Spermaceti wax taken from a chamber in their head was used to make top of the range candles. Ambergris from the stomach was used in perfume. Along with this blubber, they were also collecting baleen, which was more valuable than oil, which is also called a whale bone. So all this was done by London's first whaling company, that was Muscovy Company, that is established in 1555, and the London's Arctic whaling rebounded in 1700. So this museum exhibits how the South Sea whaling was done, and it also has a collection of the log of a South Sea whaling ship, and they also have a book or a notes that shows us the whale tales that have marked after every whale was killed. Docklands has changed dramatically in 1980s, and as I have said earlier, now it is home to Canary Wharf. So although some of the Docklands was rebuilt after the war, a lot of the area became derelict by 1975. Wharf factory and businesses in the area were shutting up shop. The once mighty royal docks even closed to commercial traffic, since they weren't suited to large container ships. So in the 1980s, the London's Docklands Development Corporation began the physical, economic regeneration of the area, but it was met with a lot of opposition from the local residents, who believed developers were putting profits over people. Nothing could have prepared these local communities for the scale and pace of change that followed. The area is now home to Canary Wharf, the Docklands of light railway, an airport, shopping centers, and international companies, all standing where the world's busiest docks once did. So here you see a lot of models related to how the Docklands were, how the Docklands was after the war and before the war, and how it has moved or changed constantly from one form to the other form. warehouses were full of spices, sugar, meat, fruit, coffee, tea, alcohol, drugs, furs, leather, timber, wool, and many more, mostly from the British Empire. So, in here we can also see a cabinet full of samples of these that were used to identify the goods. A wide range of ships brought these cargoes to London. In the period 1840 to 1875, sleek and fast clippers carried tea from China and wool from Australia. Heavy four-masted barbecues carried wool, grain, and nitrate in bulk. By the late 1880s, steam had overtaken sail. Despite this success, there was trouble in waters. Dock workers were frustrated with the poor pay and working conditions. This eventually erupted in the 1889 docker strike, which brought the port to a halt. But the strike was a success and pay went to half a shilling an hour, known as the docker's tanner. So the shilling worth today is approximately around 2.05 pounds. And here you see these are the samples that I was telling you about, where they have still the displays going on. We can just check them, like what are they, and mostly we have found like the nutmeg, brown sugar or coffee, tea, and a little few like the, yeah, you can see here the dried ginger and coca and so many.
forward in the museum, one more interesting gallery that I have found is the sailor towns. So few of the towns in the earlier days, such as Wapping, Bermondsey, Rotherham, Deptford, Greenwich, these were catered to ship's crews, giving them the nickname sailor towns. So there was a recreation of the Radcliffe Highway, that's the infamous for drinking, vice and crime. So that has been recreated in this museum in one of the galleries, and which was quite interesting to see. So it was known like ship crews arrived in sailor towns and hung around for a few days or weeks waiting for a ship home. They had often just been paid, so they were out to enjoy themselves, and these towns, whichever has offered them the catered the ship crews, they were full of pubs, wild animal shops and pawnbrokers for the sailors. So all their earned money they used to spend it for all these
With that, our History of Docklands Museum tour comes to an end. I hope you found it interesting and informative. Also, if I have missed something important or if I have understood in another way that I have explained, please do let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.